In this game you need to trust your ears, not your eyes. In fact, you'll probably do a better job if you simply play it with your eyes closed. Before I even start talking about it, make sure you have your headphones on. Most of the gameplay shown in this video will only make sense if you're wearing one. In 2006, a series of very interesting and somewhat experimental games were released for the Game Boy Advance. That series is known as Bit Generations. It's composed of 7 different games, all with the same minimalist art style, but very different in regards to gameplay. Sadly, they were only released in Japan, which is odd because they're all in English and they don't have any story or any complex menus or tutorials that prevent you from enjoying them, but nothing we can do. In this video I'll talk about one of the games in special, Soundvoyager. But to be honest, each one of them probably deserves their own video. There are some that are more interesting than others, but they are all worth checking out. If you just try to look at some gameplay of any of them, you probably get nowhere. I mean, look at that. Unless you know how the game plays like, you probably have no idea of what's going on, right? Soundvoyager is no exception. I'll do my best to try and explain how it works, but I think you'll only understand how great it is when you try it yourself. So, this is a very interesting game where the only thing that matters, the whole game, is focused around the sound. The whole game uses only 3 buttons. Most of the stages are played just by moving left and right. On some of them, you have to use the A button to accelerate or maybe fire at something. When you start, the only available stage is called Soundcatcher Voyage. There are different types of stages with different play styles, but Soundcatcher is the main one. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Pay attention to where the sound is coming from when you move around. The red wave on the top shows how close to you the sound is, but only vertically, meaning it shows how close to the bottom it is, but not necessarily close to you. Try closing your eyes for the next one. Where is the sound coming from? Left? Right? Is it centered? Can you still see the green marker? You have no option but to trust your ears now. So, how was it? Pretty easy, right? This is the only stage of Soundcatcher where you have any kind of visual cue. From here on, you're gonna have to guide yourself by sound only. Each stage has a different theme and they all sound great, but things can get pretty tricky sometimes. Whenever you reach the end of a stage that forks into 2, you can choose which side you go to by catching the sound on the left or right. Each branch of the map is composed of 3 levels of a different extra stage, the purple colored ones, and several Soundcatcher stages, the blue ones. Just like in the first stage of Soundcatcher where you're shown how to play the game with visual cues, each of the extra stages also have starter levels to help you understand what's going on. So let's take a look at them. On Sound Drive, you're headed the opposite direction of the traffic. All you need to do is listen carefully which lane the sound is coming from and get out of the way. You can accelerate with the A button if you'd like, but at your own risk. Get hit and it's game over. Sound Slalom is pretty self-explanatory. The sounds here work as gates. You have to pass between the two, so it's easier said than done. You need to center yourself so one of the beeps is on your left ear and the other on your right. It doesn't help that later on, some music also starts playing, making it even harder to focus just on the 2 beats. This mode has a time limit, so using A to accelerate whenever possible is key to success. Be careful though, miss a gate and you lose 15 seconds. Sound Chase is a variation of Sound Drive. Not only you'll be driving in the opposite direction of traffic, but you also need to catch a target that keeps changing lanes, and you have a time limit, so you need to keep accelerating the whole time. This one is pretty hard. Sound Cannon is basically a shooter, where you have to hear where the enemies are coming from and take them down before they reach you. There's no time limit, so you don't need to rush, but beware though, sometimes the stages can last a long time since some of the enemies will not rush straight on at you. They might try to trick you by moving left and right before charging on. But there's no punishment for missing the shot, so fire away. Yep, there's one called Soundcock. It's pretty simple. You have 1 minute to catch all of the roosters. Their movement can be quite random and tricky to follow, but it's not impossible. Sound Picker is similar to Soundcock and Soundcatcher. There's a little tune constantly going on and several beats scattered through that song. They are stationary, but unlike the roosters, the beats blend in with the music, so they don't play constantly, making it so that you need to wait and listen whenever they play and adjust your direction to it. Keep in mind that most of the gameplay I've shown here is from the first stage of each mode with the visual cues enabled, so you know what's going on. The second and third stages always add something else to make things more difficult. For example, this is the third level of Soundcock. There are 3 roosters to find, and after a while you run out of breath, so the heavy breathing sound gets in the way. Trust me, it can be quite challenging at times, but not in a bad way, you know? It just makes you want to try again and focus a little harder. I often found myself closing my eyes on some of the harder stages just to focus only on the sound. Hey, whatever works, right? If you manage to complete every stage, you get the ending credits and some other nice little extras that will keep you entertained for a long while. Soundvoyager is a very special game. You can play Soundcatcher and just enjoy the great music as it slowly comes together, or just play the extra stages for the fun, for the challenge. There's a lot of content to be enjoyed here despite the simple looking visuals. To play a game by having to trust your ears and sometimes your instinct is a very unique thing. It's a weird feeling, kind of like having to learn something from scratch, having to learn something for the first time, because whenever you play a game, you usually have something similar to use as a reference, Racing games are racing games, platformers are platformers. But with this one, I can't really express well enough what an interesting experience it is. You really need to try this yourself, really. You won't regret it.